Former minister and founder of Something or Other Publishing, Wade Franson, is the host of Created in the Image of God, a series that examines the role of religion in society. From messianic returns to the emotive responses transmitted throughout our culture, Wade fearlessly addresses reality claims from all directions, objectively exploring their compatibility with Holy Scripture. Joining him are groundbreaking artist and podcaster Jacqueline Clare, whose focus on spiritual realism is summarized by the quote, "When we don't take the high road with our choices and miss the opportunity to develop spiritual qualities, we literally forfeit the purpose of our lives."
Image of God, where we bring on a unique guest each week to explore the role of religion in society. Tonight's Valentine themed topic is We Love the InterFaith Library. We've got the founder of the InterFaith Library on tonight's episode, Mekye Abdus Salaam. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but he is the creator and chairman of the InterFaithLibrary.com, a unique contributor to understanding the underlying unity of the three Abrahamic religions. They are etymologically the same. His desire for interfaith unity comes from his teachings and understanding of Allah's, in other words, God's universal and inclusive message of love written in the holy books, i.e., Torah, Bible, and the Quran. During his early academic years, he was introduced to a Catholic school education. The Imam then attended Massey Business College for 2 years and obtained his ABA. Following Massey, he attended and graduated from Aligarh. I'm not pronouncing that right. I know I'm not, and I'm hoping that he can help me with that one. The Muslim university where he obtained his BA in Islamic studies. Shortly afterwards, as a dual supplementary major, he obtained his BA from the University of Dar es Salaam in psychology and adult education. In 2021, the city of Philadelphia, under the Kenny administration and the federal government's Operation Allies refugee program, commissioned Imam Abdus Salaam to provide a point of entry location for the Philadelphia International Airport for people evacuating from Afghanistan. His main focus was to create an interfaith prayer space to provide spiritual counsel while creating a welcoming reflection space for all evacuees returning American citizens coming through Philadelphia. In addition to his background in classical and contemporary Arabic lexicology and grammar, he is also proficient in classic biblical Hebrew with 25 years of theological teaching experience as an imam and spiritual advisor of 24 years of scholastic secular educational experience as a mathematician and English language teacher. With that said, he has researched many interfaith organizations and their websites and found them to be, at best, merely tolerant of other religious faiths. Common etymology and scriptural revelations have been omitted from their messages and or mission statements. I'd like to welcome him in to the studio.
Hello.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm grateful for this honor to adjust this, to spend some time with my brothers today.
Okay, great. Why don't you shift the camera just a little bit so that you're in the center of the screen? There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
We can see your beautiful face there.
So how are you? First of all, if I may, I just want, if it's not asking too much, can we and reflect on the tragedy that just happened yesterday, the shooting of the college students in Michigan. There is this disturbance in the world today, and sometimes the violence is perpetuated around it is so unforgivable. I'm just thinking, at the moment, if we all could just take a moment for prayer, just to take a moment of reflection, families for their losses and their injuries.
Sure. Yeah. Did you want to conduct that short moment of silence for us? Feels appropriate.
Well, let's just have about 30 seconds in silence and reflect the incident and pray, I guess, in the way that dually and collectively. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Okay. I'd like to start the show with a little bit about you and your background. We call these the formative years. And so I'd like you to describe in your own words how you developed into the man that you are now today, and what type of influences your childhood contributed to that growth.
Well, I don't think my background from most people. I was raised in a faith family. My father was, and my mother was a Roman Catholic. I think there was issue how the children raised. I had 5 siblings. My maternal, and we were all raised in Catholic or parochial. Our faith was Islamic, but we were introduced a broader academic awareness because, our family is very diverse. We had Jewish family, we have Christian folk in our family, we have non in our family, and we also had Muslims in our family. And one I always thought it was very important was diversity, inclusion, and equity, even before these terms was even used. Through my elementary school and junior high school and of my high school years, I was educated in a parochial or those were formidable times, as you say. A lot of what I was taught or was told kind of struggled, had a conflict with my inner being, my intellect. Some things was said, you just believe certain things by faith. And I don't know if anyone's a formal Catholic school background or education. You do, that pretty much you don't question authoritative explanation what God was. When I got into high school, introduced to a more liberal and Pentecostal sort of seeing Christianity. I also had a lot of friends and those conversations were broad. They were for the most part. And I thought it was a uniqueness to that because we were good people and just wanted to be friends, or whether or not establishing rules for tolerance. It was the name. I later joined and again got to see a world, a conflict, a struggle. Upon being in the military, I realized that there were a lot of people who believed in God, but didn't necessarily have a formal, traditional, religious organization or theology that they. So as I got a little older and started going to college, and then I realized that people were having these who and what God was. Some of those debates were really, and even though there was a difference in our ideas and our views, from the point of, are we really saying things different? And then it got to a point where I don't think we're each other. So I was able to go into reflection and period of study, which I'm to some conclusions that kind of was controversial, but I came to the understanding just within self that the scriptures were not individualistic, but progressive, that they were, one was completing the one beyond. As a Muslim, we always, God's word is eternal from the very beginning. And so doing, started looking at the patriarchs and all Abrahamic religions and realized that we had the same patriarchs, and Noah and Moses and Christ and Prophet Muhammad. And then I realized that some of these figured from one religion to the other. But studying the language, to study the language from the origin of the language and not in English, I decided that I was going to invest about 3 into lexical studies, because I thought that if God's eternal, and there's a verse in the Quran where God says, "Kalamatullah," there is no change in my speech. And if this is a divine writ, if the Bible is truly a divine writ, then there should not be any changes, interpretations, but maybe should not be any internal changes in the word through this walk. That if we weren't confrontational, the things that were lost was in translation and interpret. And then it became to me, is this what man is doing? And doing this, are we intentionally being divisive? A position of ignorance, prejudices, or, in the spiritual world, let's just keep it simple in this work. And I was like elated in what I thought was, and so I was privy to sit under rabbis. I was under muftis and mullahs. I was privy to sit under PhDs of Christendom, and we had heated discussions, but they were all academic. They were all spiritual. Varied a little, but the message seemed to be the same. And approximately years ago, prior to my mother's passing, I remember she told stop complaining about things. That if I wasn't going to do anything to make change, then shut up. She really did. My mom was really a hard woman in the very beginning, and maybe I shouldn't use this word, but say the last 3 or 4 years, my mom was really I guess she lived to be about 84 years old, and I guess when you go like that, you go through the growing pains, and I seen them, and it stuck with me. If you're not going to do anything to up, and I told her about this idea. I said, I want to create this library. And the library was supposed to be just a compendium of work, come and grab and get a little bit of this, a little bit of this, secular library, instead of going all over the place looking for religious material. It's all right here, and you can sit through and go through the shelves, and then people was like, well, I want to go places with you. Got this idea of travel. One of my favorite TV programs was called.
Wait a minute. Let's build a little bit of suspense into this.
Okay.
Up next is we're going to talk about one of your favorite or your favorite TV programs. Is that the case? Is it your favorite or is it one of your favorites?
Which one?
Well, the one you're about to tell us. When we come back, hold on.
Well, no, it's a TV called.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay.
Now we'll come back just a second.
I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now. I hear the sounds. I can hear it now. Of your heartbeat. I can hear it now.
Like a lot of fun. What did you think of when you saw that?
Little moment. And your timing was impeccable. I knew that at the time, but yeah. And so that was my journey. And when I started traveling, that Christians didn't practice their religion the same way. Even here in the United States, Christians on the West Coast, things a little different than Christians on the East Coast. Muslims on the West Coast different than Muslims on the East Coast, and likewise with Judaism. no uniformity necessarily in the way that people religion. You know, you had to take into factor. You had to factor in tradition and family values and region. So my journey just took me to say, I need to put this down so that, you know, sort of like a grand central thing you need to know about your religion or to learn about somebody else's religion library. And, you know, and I had some roadblocks in the beginning. Some of my contemporaries were, why are you doing this? Had some Christian theologians because it was more academic and was like, we kind of wish you wouldn't do this. Same thing with some of the Jewish scholars, you know, but then, you know, most people that I'm going to attract to the necessarily academics, you know, or scholastically, or just people who want to be able to fine tune their faith and be part of their walk. And then, you know, am I putting out or am I saying anything that's not true? It got to the point where it wasn't an issue of what is true or not. Why don't you want me to do this? Do you have an agenda? You know, what is the machine that doesn't want and a lot of people's fear was, and I don't know what the audience is, but when we talk about interfaith and multi-faith coalitions, you know, New World Order, you want to create one big giant religion. If you look, you know, right on my homepage of very clear, this is not a place for that. You know, we're here to convert. You know, we want, you know, the best.
Let's
best
repeat
people
that because it sounded a little broken up. You're here to convert or not to convert?
No, you're to talk. We're here to converse, not to convert.
Okay.
You know, what best to do is to, you know, when you want to know something about somebody, ask the people who are actually doing it. You know, if about automotive technology, I'm going to go to a mechanic or something, you know, because, I mean, anybody can have an opinion, but I shouldn't be able to have an opinion of something you have no knowledge of. So, you know, if you're a Christian, then you come here, tell me what your Christianity is for you. You know what Christianity is. Don't come ask me. Ask my brother or sister who is a Jew or Jewish, and was a Muslim or a Buddhist. And now I have my Baha'i brothers and sisters. Ask them yourself. Don't let the media, don't let distort what the message is. Ask the people who are actually walking. And so it started off as just a mission of sort. And then one day I was looking at one of the emails that came through the site at the shooting down in Texas with the children, and you know, wasn't even 24 hours later, an email stood straight out, and it was like, why is InterFaith Library silent? And I was like, wow, like, you know, I didn't even realize it was even that relevant to even have a voice other than thing. And it was like, no, if the faith-based community is right there, then the faith-based community saying or doing about this situation with poverty and people wanting to eat and cross and all these things, but why aren't they reaching the little people? They can reach they're not touching the little neighborhoods. And I just went to grocery stores. I mean, some things like, okay, is there any way I could acquire away so that I'm not going to resell it? I just want to give it to the people who need it. You know, every 3 or 4 days a week, I was ordered to $8,000 to $10,000, $12,000 worth of food and distribute. I was supplying food mosques, synagogues, and I was like, what in the world is going on here? No promotion, no advertisement or two. And then the next thing you know, it was like people was on InterFaith Library. And I was actually walking downtown and I heard a person having a conversation that didn't, and the couple was like, well, I can't wait to go see, I'm going to look up InterFaith Library. If it ain't there, then I don't know where we're going to look at. And I was like, and they said, yeah, it's this amazing website where you can pretty much find there. And I was like, really? And the people didn't even notice that. I didn't look at the homepage 2 times. And it was just like, in Atlanta, I'm like, I'm in an InterFaith Library. And then the other day, about a week ago, I was walking the street in Clearwater, Florida. I had just came back from Rose, and I was and I seen the Baha'i Center. You know, I seen the sign, and someone said, you know, stuff that I acquired about, and they said, we'll call Wade. I was like, who is Wade? Again, you know, this has been the journey.
Wait a minute. You're just making my job way too easy here, because you know what? You set the last commercial up so easily. We got another one, but you tell me how good I do here with this next commercial.
Okay.
Hold on just a sec.
What do divorce, kidnapping, ancient prophecies, and the collapse of the Soviet Union have in common with the music of the Beatles? These are all elements of author Wade Franson's traumatic autobiographical journey, recorded in his best-selling book, The People of the Sign. He effortlessly weaves these elements together, proving once and for all that truth really is far, far stranger than fiction. Order your copy now on Amazon, or by emailing orders at soupllc.com.
Wow.
Hey there, Mekye. So good to see you again.
How are you, Wade?
I'm doing great.
Likewise.
I'm watching and saying little prayers for the remover of difficulties, because we are having some technical issues tonight. Your audio isn't the absolute best. You're cutting in and out a little bit. Probably you're not aware of it, but so don't worry about it. It's fine. I'm just saying I'm doing great. I'm so glad to have you here, but I want to acknowledge for the audience that if they're, you know, hearing that, we've been having a little bit of technical difficulties this evening. However, I think that's just making everybody lean in and listen carefully to try to catch those words. And
okay,
I want to announce that for those who are listening in, please do present your comments in the chat, because that little ad we just played is the announcement of a free giveaway, which we'll be running every week on the show. I'll be giving away a copy of my book every week to the comment giver for the best comment of the evening. So feel free to roll those comments in, and we'll speak a little bit later to the Imam about those comments. But I want to dig in now to a piece of your story that I feel like we have in common. And that's actually languages and working to understand and interpret, right? So you said something in your introduction that I want to ask you about. And that is that the Abrahamic religions, and I know you're just beginning to investigate the Baha'i writings as well, but the Abrahamic religions are etymologically the same. Can you unpack that for us a little bit? What does that mean? What really are you describing with that statement?
Well, what I mean, sometimes we use words or phrases that make up, that isolates us, but in reality, they bring us or bring us closer together if we truly understand, down simplistically. In the Bible, in English, is "I am the Lord thou God." But the same who will have differences about it, because their whole argument is attributed to being God, or how God is manifested or stood by individuals. But yet that same expression, a testimony of our own faith, in order to be an expression that says La ilaha illallah, there is no God. It's the same expression. It's the same meaning. So what I'm etymologically is that, if we weren't being so biased, a lot of times, if we're twist scripture in the Quran, and I'm sure you can give me a biblical scripture, a Baha'i text, or from the Jewish text, that identically what I'm saying, but we don't want to look at those comparisons. What I was trying to convey is that, the Quran is clear, a new book within and of itself, but one that confirms it. And so there are Christians and Jews that don't even know. You and I had spoke, maybe I'm getting ahead of you. We had spoke about, certain words like Allah, where people who are not Muslim think the word Allah is different entity, a whole different God, and that Muslims worship different than Christians and Jews. But etymology root comes from the Old Testament. When we look at the root El Shaddai, all of these are the same root. Linguistically, if we go to the Hebrew language, Aleph, Lam, the Arabic language, Aleph, Lam, Ha. And, we can have a grammar close down, but the word starts from Spanish, they say El or La, which creates linguistically as something definitive, something big, and it's not just general. We're talking the God, creator of the heavens and the earth, the creator of all that is, all that's seen and unseen. And so when we look at it, we're all saying the same thing. We just saying a different word or a different expression.
Well, let me jump in on that thought. Yeah, let me jump in on that thought. So the first thing that comes to mind is Winston Churchill, who said that the British and the Americans were two people separated by a common language. And of course, he was a bit of a jokester, right? The nuances and the differences between British English and American English are not, they're very minimal. But I do recall when I was a college student over in Great Britain, and I came back from working in this office to the host family that I was staying with, and they had this little daughter, Maveen, and I'll never forget this. He said, and they had a little dog named Skipper, and they said, "Do you want to come? Would you like to come with us for a walk in the park with Skipper?" And I just said, "Sure. Just let me jump inside and change my pants." Change my pants, and Maveen, the little 5-year-old, looked at her dad in shock and said, Daddy, he said he had to change his pants. And pants in England is underpants, right? So this 5-year-old wondered, why on earth does this grown man need to change his underpants before he could come with us? She was imagining all kinds of things in her little 5-year-old mind.
Right.
But going deeper into that little concept there is the Tower of Babel, right? So exactly. You and I haven't talked about this, but I'm curious because this is a story that's fascinating to me. Bob L., the Gate of God, and God changes this term to Babel, which means confusion. And the story goes, he destroyed the unity. He destroyed the unity by confusing the languages. What's your take on that story? First, from the Quran, how does the Quran, if anything, does the Quran deal with that story at all? I'm just curious. And then what's your personal take on that story?
Well, it's ironic that you brought that up because there are 2 verses, and I'm loosely translating in English. I mean, it doesn't it's not a direct corollary to that story. Here we go again, addressing idea. The one verse in the Quran, if God wanted us all to be the same, he would have made us being the same, speaking the same, looking the same, walking the same, talking the same, and all. But then there's another verse that loosely is translated to say, he made us different so we could better know. So,
I'm sorry, he made us different so we could better know
one another. So that there could be that diversity from one individual to the other. So when I think of the Tower of Babel, the people were not supposed to do. And God reprimanded. He reprimanded them for it, and they were stricken. Their I'm assuming culture and everything, and it had to be. If this was an instantaneous thing, it had to be frightening. Like, wait a minute, I was just talking ago. Now I have no clue what is he talking about. And do I run from weight now because I don't understand him? Or do I invest to relearn weight or to understand what weight is going through? So now I have to learn this new language. So in this psychological world, we have this expression say that 85% of communication is nonverbal. So, I have to learn something else now. I can't necessarily I have to look at all the elements that make weight, that is, to get a better understanding of what it is weight is trying to convey. To me, that the Quran, is very clear on diversity, and it embraces it. It says, my own personal opinion, which I try not to use. Now, God doesn't, in a lot of ways, he wants us to be different, so that the gift that is him, like here, that can make us each uniquely interesting as individuals, but interesting towards each other, needing what is the likelihood that it just clicked, when we met.
You've really opened up a new level of understanding or a new possibility. And I've been fascinated with the Tower of Babel story for a long time. It's been actually really instrumental in helping me view things in a different way that's opened up my understanding. But what I'm now hearing is the possibility that the Tower of Babel is symbolic of any corrupt religion, right? Where people have coalesced around any dogma, right? And the need to shake up the language, to mix up and force people to study it anew from a different perspective. Because once that corruption sets in, and once that dogma sets in, this becomes a hermetically sealed belief system, right? So, for example, there are a number of great comments in the chat. I'm going to just show one here from Ralph Shoemaker, who references Herbert Armstrong, of all people. Herbert Armstrong is the founder of a sect that I used to belong to. And Ralph didn't, but apparently he's familiar with Herbert Armstrong. And I was actually a minister in Herbert Armstrong's church and his Plain Truth magazine. And I love this, that the plain truth, he's saying, is a concept in these various things. But we had a hermetically sealed belief system, and in some ways not too different from many, which was we had the truth. We had the true understanding that others didn't. And we were supposed to hold fast to that truth. Now, there's a time and there's a balance here. I don't want to throw out babies with bathwaters, but we were basically taught, and I was supposed to teach. I shied away from that teaching and later, moved away entirely from that teaching. But we were supposed to teach not to really read dissident literature, right? Not to read information from other sources, because that was most likely a deception of Satan, right? So our belief system was hermetically sealed and protected because anything that would challenge our beliefs was coming from Satan, right? And that was the protection that kept us true to the dogma that we had. And it turns out much of that, frankly, wasn't really true, right? And any constructed religion has taken the divine word, the divine revelation, and interpreted it, and over time, most likely corrupted it, right? And I haven't looked at the Tower of Babel in that sense, because the Tower of Babel was always, for me, a false from the start, not originating in truth, but false from the start. And now I'm seeing the possibility. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if I can add to that, because I didn't want to lose my this gentleman put that out, and again, this isn't being biased from one, but it's kind of interesting when I look at how we got here. To Christianity, I ran across that. I was told, Christians were told, don't read this, don't do that, don't do this. My ex used to say when I first was married, she was like, she was not allowed to have a concordance. She was not allowed to have, these were tools used for the academics amongst them. Searching these materials could lead them to their misthinking. Same thing with Jewish practitioners. They would know there were certain things we were allowed to read or weren't allowed to read. And was that in Islam, we're encouraged to read every. And where I'm bringing that up is when one of the things that was one of my stumbling blocks as a library was, many Christians and Jews will come to my talk. Wow, the way you present Islam is so beautiful, but I can never be because y'all don't believe in Christ. And I said, who told you that? Messiah. I said, who told you that? Well, y'all don't believe that he's of the Spirit. I said, who told you that? And read it. And they were like, no. Well, then how can you speak of Jews said the same thing? But when you go to a Muslim and it says, you know, whether argument or a bad argument, but we get into a debate with a Christian or a Jew and be like, oh, you believe this? No, we don't, but that's what your book said. Well, how do you know? Because we read it. Not how you interpret it, but we read it. Well, why would you read it? Why conversation if I don't know what it is that we're going to have a conversation about? It's just like if you could read and say, let's bake wheat bread, but you don't even know it. Wouldn't it behoove you to learn a little bit about preparing for you to have a better enjoyment of this experience to come in here? And other than that, all you're going to be on the sideline watching. Either you appreciate it. I always figure appreciation better comes if we all can enjoy it together, all in the dough and meet it and do all of these things together. I'm not saying that one thing is better than the other, but going back to what this gentleman, you hold a person or people back, and you into, you know, the danger in that is indoctrination. Allow them to grow. You don't allow them. Yep. And the only thing that you can believe is what your mother say growing up. I don't know if I'm just assuming this is a commonality. You don't do what I do. You do as I say.
Yeah.
You know, so
comment here, I think, that reflects that. And then I want to also sum this up with our next ad, which is the person who did the introduction, Dan Sanderson, has launched an anthology. We're going to run the ad for that. And for those who want to know a little bit more about it, this anthology is also announcing a show that we're going to be adding, which is going to get to this point of diving into those hermetically sealed belief systems wherever they reside, and it kind of exploding them gently, popping them gently from the inside by introducing those elements of challenge. And we're going to come back and we're going to challenge a little bit some of the things that you've said as we come to the conclusion here, just so that we keep it honest. I'm a fan of everything you've said and you're doing, and I'm a true believer. But I know there are some who might be skeptical about some of the things we're talking about. So we'll come back right after this break and address that a little bit.
Your story has the power to start a movement. Journalism is more than a tool for broadcasting news. It's an important way of fostering meaningful cultural relationships that create tangible change in our society. With our anthology Journalism Behind Bars, you can now do your part and make your mark. From expert writers to passionate amateur, everyone has a story to tell. Our aim is to promote equality, empathy, and create a safe space for different perspectives and interpretations of the world around us. Come join us today and break free from the toxic news cycle by submitting your story to Journalism Behind Bars at soupllc.com.
So we want everyone watching to consider possibly contributing to that anthology. So one of the things that I want to address, and you talked about it a little bit, is how a simple misunderstanding of the word can divide us. And I'll repeat it in case some of it got lost in a little bit of the breaking up. When you were talking about the word Allah, and that Christians around the world read the Bible, and Christians and Jews read the Bible in different languages. And depending on the language, you know, when I was a minister in Germany, I used a different word for God when I was preaching. And I was traveling around Europe. In France, I would use a different word for God. In In Sweden, I would use a different word for God. Those are languages with which I was familiar, and I was doing work in those languages. I was behind the Iron Curtain speaking in Russian, using a different word for God. I never used the word Allah for God, but that was only because I don't speak one of the languages that you speak, which is Arabic. And in those parts of the world, Christians reading their Bibles read Allah. So it's really the same God, right? But what is your conception of God? Because, and I don't mean the nature of God per se. I don't want to get into a theological discussion. But how do you view God? And is that any different from the way a Christian or a Jew would view God? I know you touched on this, but maybe you could dive a little bit deeper into it.
And wait, the problem with me answering that would take us into a very academic observation. I guess the simple way is, if we're talking about God, the being, that is it's not comprehensible to the being. I always say God is the beginning. He was here before there was anything, and here when everything is gone. To better understand the concept of God, creator of all that is, and we have a scholar, Hadrat radiallahu anh, who said, whatever you imagine God to be is different from that, because God created the mind. He created the imagination, imagery. So how can God be what he created? So he can't be what he created. Now, it's a little controversial a little bit, because you say we're rich. But, the best way that I can explain that, God is all-seeing. He sees everything. But in order for us to see, we need eyes. The physical appendages that allow. But in that sight, I would say that probably even a disservice to my statement. That sight is one grain of sand of all the beaches and all of this world and every other world. One grain of sand is the sight that we're privy to understand, and or God sees beyond that capacity. So when we talk about it there and have a real intellectual discussion about, now is the question is, knowing that he's this, if I can use being that is incomprehensible, he bring himself into a form that is comprehensible. And again, the easiest answer to that, God can do what he wants to do, what he wants to say. He can present himself in any manifestation that he wants, in a thought, an idea, an imagery, but with that also, since you asked me directly, the easiest way for me and God in the most beautiful light is the 99 that he attributes himself to. And my name attributes Salam, when you say Abdus, or Abd, A-B-D, and Arabia means slave to or submitting to. Salam, peace, is all his attributes are beautiful and are harmonious. I am a servant of peace. Now there is 98 more attributes that I took one. So when we say who is God to a Muslim, or who is God, is one of those 99 attributes. For me, and God is Rahman, he's merciful. God is Rahim, God is Salam, he is peace. He is wise. So
Thank you.
when we talk about attributes instead of a physicality.
Yeah. So beautiful answer. I'm reminded of my sophomore Bible class in my undergrad degree, core theology, where we were investigating all the names of God from the Old Testament, right? And I think your answer goes a long way to showcase that whoever it is that claims that they know God better than somebody else it's just a false claim, and it's a tragic claim, and it's a terrible claim,
and it keeps
and it's a claim that God would prefer we not make.
I totally agree.
And to put it in humorous terms, let's not go around saying my dad's bigger than your dad. It just leads to fights. So I'm going to switch though to those who perhaps we invited who might have been itching for a little bit of a fight with an imam. I'll acknowledge that it's not always unicorns and rainbows. We are advocating for that, but we recognize that a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of tension sometimes between the ideas, it may be necessary from time to time. So I'm going to take a moment to announce again this new show that we're going to be launching in March, a joint venture between Planksip and Something or Other Publishing. And it's not actually going to be a religious show. And Something or Other Publishing is the sponsor of this show, Created in the Image of God. And Something or Other Publishing does have religious books, which we've promoted from time to time. We're announcing tonight the launch. First, I'm going to talk about the love. We haven't really, because we had all these technical difficulties, we kind of got a little bit off our game. We were going to announce it's Valentine's Day. This show is titled We Love the InterFaith Library. And to sort of cement that relationship between Something or Other Publishing and your work, the InterFaith Library, we're announcing a partnership to co-launch the Royal Falcon Press imprint of Something or Other Publishing, to group the religious books under that imprint, and in conjunction with your great work for this library, because we love it. And as sort of a spring romance, we've got a special offer that's going to go along with that, where Something or Other Publishing is offering a $500 coupon to those authors who, through your work, are introduced to the publishing company and would like to publish their works through Something or Other Publishing. And this is a gift that you'll be able to give to any of your supporters who wish to either have promotional services for their work in the religious sphere as an author, or perhaps publish a new book. We've got offerings on the marketing side. We've also got a certification course, a premium program that helps you complete your book and market your book and take it to publication. And we have a track record of pretty much delivering a #1 rated hot new release through our program that helps authors crowdsource their readers before they publish the book, such that when the book is launched, it is in fact already successful. We've got a proven methodology. So this $500 coupon is yours to give to anyone you wish that they can come to us and use. So I'm announcing that partnership first of all.
Appreciate it.
And I know you'll be promoting that on your site. And you've already agreed to come back on the show. And to put the audience at ease, you've already agreed to allow me to play the next commercial, because we do have a variety of publishers, of authors. We have a variety of viewpoints that are expressed by our authors. These are not necessarily the views of Something or Other Publishing, but that's not just a cop-out. We do encourage free speech. our editorial policy is, if it's not intentionally offensive, if it's not intending to deceive, and of course we wouldn't publish pornography, and we'll decide what that is. But if it's intended to educate and inform, even if the message is controversial, or even if the message might contradict somebody else's message or somebody else's belief, we're willing to publish that book. So out of respect, I can guarantee you we were not in any way defaming, let's say, the Prophet Muhammad in any way, shape, or form with anything that we've published. That's a criteria that we have out of respect for all religions. But to address the issue of those within a religion, such as like the Tower of Babel, whether it be Christianity and the Crusades, whether it be the time when you had two different popes and they were excommunicating each other, whether it's the writings of the Old Testament themselves, where there's a record of God asking the people of Israel, or the Israelites at that time, to commit genocide. These are legitimate, valid questions, and some have had questions about Islam. So I'm announcing here that we have a UK correspondent who's one of our authors who's going to be on this show, Journalism Behind Bars. And she has challenged certain tenets of Islam as practiced. She's challenged certain behaviors of some of those in Islam as practiced. And so I'm just going to run the ad for her book and let everyone know that these two parties have agreed under the banner of cultural journalism to come together in respect and discuss this topic. And I'm going to take one more minute to really caveat this before I play the ad. The ad is of course promotional, and it presents her perspective. But if we bring on a person, and let's say they represent liberal views, we don't mean that as a pejorative term. We might say those who are of a more liberal persuasion politically view the world through the lens of collective responsibility, collective action, society as a whole taking responsibility for those who are weaker. And if we then have somebody who's, we might say, is of a more conservative, we're not using that label as a negative. We're saying this person views the world through the lens of individual responsibility and the building of individual character and individual courage in the face of a majority who might disagree. So less collective action based on a majority, more individual action based on an individual conviction. These can be presented in a respectful way where each party is viewing the other as having good intent, as being sincere in their beliefs, and bringing them together to discuss the issue at hand. So I'm going to play this ad and then just talk to you for a couple of minutes about what's in it. I know we're approaching overtime here, but to sort of invite people to come hear you again and address some of the concerns that they might have as to, again, speaking to a religious audience, knowing that not everyone is a firm believer in interfaith activities, as you and I are, going on full record. I am a full endorser of everything you're doing. And I'm such a pleasure to have you on the show. But we want to acknowledge that there might be questions that legitimately need answers, and that you and I are ready to address those in a future show. Long-winded caveat as to what I'm about to play. So you'll notice we specifically chose the term Islamism, again, out of respect, to define something that's distinct from some of those pure motives and the pure teachings. May have been in some ways difficult to watch for you, and I recognize and acknowledge that in your courage for being here on this show that seeks to have an open dialogue. Anything you'd like to say in terms of closing this out? I know we talked about this, but I'm not trying to put you in an awkward spot, just that we want to open a dialogue and really reach out to people on all sides of the issue in an effort to try to help people understand in one sense that there's nothing to fear, and that we're also working together from wherever we are to eradicate those aspects of any belief system that are negative and corrupt and perhaps need to be reformed. The dogmas, the incorrect interpretations.
Well, and that was very, look at it a little bit, but it's a reality and what's happening. But what most people need to understand is that extremisms in all religions, and that talking about fear, most people are paralyzed. They don't understand. One of the things that I noticed where it says our position, I'm saying people have a perspective. Muslims supposedly treat Muslim women from the truth. There is a small minority who oppress women, perspective or interpretation of what they think the Quran says. They'll be the first to say, if you historically look at Islam open lens, it's the first religion to create a democracy. That democracy was women's rights and women's vote, a woman's voice. In early Islam, one of the most wealthiest and powerful people or person in all of Arabia, and she wind up marrying the Prophet Muhammad. But we can look into every religion. There are the KKK who professes to be Christian. Who am I to say if they're Christian or not in their belief? The other groups that use the banner of Christianity, but we don't go kicking Christians in the head because of some extreme views that a may hold. There are tags Catholicism because of the bad deeds of individuals, and same thing with Judaism. Who's are this or that, and it's so far from the truth. Against the separation, and who's propagating this? What is the idea and the motivation behind the machine? These things, and with all respect for the guest next, if this is her personal experience, and who am I to say that I had a good or a bad experience with the Islamic tradition from where she's from? You know what I mean? But again, that I want to embrace. It's just like someone slaps me, would like to believe that I can forgive that person and move on. You're human. You slap me, you might get slapped back. And, some people might look at me and say, this beautiful person, how could you do that? And I'm like, well, you're a beautiful person too.
Right.
So, in short, if I read correctly, the book was written from her experience. Fine. If this is the case, then let me introduce another experience too.
Right. So I'm reminded of a saying of Jesus, right? He that is without sin, let him cast the first stone.
Cast the first stone.
Right. So again, thank you, Mekye. This has been just an absolute pleasure. And I know we still have those some of the technical difficulties because you're traveling in a hotel situation. Viewers, Mekye, our producer, Dan Sanderson, we'll get those issues fixed before we have you on again so that our guests don't miss a single word. So that our guests don't miss a single word that you have to offer. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you on the show and to have gotten to know you. We'll continue the spring what did we call it? The springtime romance between Something or Other Publishing and the InterFaith Library and you, right up until the summer solstice, whenever that date is, with this $500 gift coupon. And our audience will see more of you as we bring you back to address this incredibly important topic of bridging the differences, of understanding not just this isn't about tolerance and coexistence, right? This is about working together, right? It's not about changing who you are. It's not about me becoming Muslim. It's not about you becoming Christian or becoming Baha'i, but recognizing not just that we have common goals, but figuring out a way to work towards those goals together, to bring the best that each of us has to offer. And in that process, guess what? We do change, right? We do learn. We do adapt. We don't just tolerate and coexist.
And as we leaving out, if I can, to keep in prayer the families of those in Michigan and other families who have family members or friends injured in these godly and unexplainable and reprehensible, and maybe we can find a solution to resolve this. And we can't do right now.
So
Let's
much.
Keep it in prayer.
Thank you so much.
Hello, and welcome to Something or Other Publishing, or as our friends like to call us, SOUP. SOUP is a platform that connects authors, readers, and service providers in one convenient place. Choose SOUP if you're an author with a great book idea and you're looking for a publisher offering hands-on coaching and some of the best royalties in the business. Or if you're a reader who enjoys engaging with celebrated and emerging authors. We already have over 3,000 of them, and more are joining every day. You can even win free books by voting on their book ideas. Or maybe you're a service provider and you're looking to engage with over 3,000 authors. We're here to help. So whether you're an author, a reader, or a service provider, you're in the right place at SOUP. Contact us at help@soupllc.com to learn more.
Well, thank you, everyone. Unless I be remiss in my responsibilities, the comment of the evening goes to Ralph Shoemaker tonight. This is something that the Imam and I had talked about earlier, and I don't know that either of us mentioned it. The derivation of the word Allah coming from Elohim. And given that the main topic was etymology, I thought this one comment deserves the comment of the evening. Thanks to all the rest of you who commented, and we look forward to seeing you back here next week with Jason Persoff. Jason Persoff is an amazing scientist and also a visual artist, taking amazing photographs of snowflakes, diving into the individuality of the creation at even the level of snowflake. We've all heard that saying that each snowflake is unique. Well, Jason Persoff next week is going to prove it with a vengeance. And we'll be back. We'll get to see our co-host, Jacqueline Clare, interviewing him. So good night, everyone. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.